I want to welcome you all, members and non-members alike, to the latest Institute of Regulation webinar with our partners Objective, who will be running this very insightful and topical session on business cases for technology and digital investment. So we're hoping that you will come away from this session with a number of new ideas, tactics and tips to help you in your day-to-day work. Now, first off, we want to give you a quick overview because I'm aware that some of you may not know much about the Institute of Regulation. We've opened up this webinar to non-members as well, but the Institute started off in 2021. It was originally created as an informal network of very excited and passionate regulatory experts. And the membership organisation was established back in 2021, growing over the last couple of years. And we now have over 80 regulatory and affiliate members across UK, Ireland, Channel Islands, and even as far as Canada. So we welcome you all, and we hope that you find this session insightful. We will have some Q&A time at the end, so you can start putting your questions in the chat box throughout the session, or you can wait till the end and raise your hand and ask the question then. We're going to start off with some polls. So we're going to be holding some polls throughout the hour. And the first poll, we want to ask you to answer the following question. Are you currently preparing or starting to think about a business case for purchasing technology? So we would like you all to start completing the poll, answering the preferred option. Just give you a moment to complete those. And here we go. Here are the results. So I will pass you over to Sue Bill, the Regional Director UK at Objective Solutions. And she is going to introduce you to the panel and go through some of the poll questions also. So I hope you enjoy this session. Please stay on mute. The session will be recorded, but we will pause the recording for your Q&A section at the end. Enjoy.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. It's lovely to see everybody here. And I think this is going to be a really good use of a lunchtime slot. So sandwiches are encouraged. That's absolutely fine. And I hope you really enjoy it. I'm going to keep my bit short because I'm not the main event today, I'm afraid. But I am the Regional Director at Objective here in the UK. And for anyone that isn't aware of us, we're a software organisation and we've been creating software for government and regulators for over 25 years now. So you might know us as Objective RegWorks. That's what our platform's called. And that's designed for regulators and its workflow and case management. And we're really, really passionate about it. We've got a lot of very nerdy people in our business that are very, very passionate about what we do. So we are really delighted to support this today. And, you know, it involves the webinar today and the panel discussion, which I think hopefully will be really insightful and a really interactive discussion. And then we will be sharing a guide, and that actually will be available right at the end of this session today and immediately available for you. And that is around preparing a successful business case for tech and digital investment. And most importantly, and real emphasis here, that this has been written independently, but with the practical, experienced advice of regulators. And I think that's the real value and the real gold. And I think for us, there was two considerations for this piece of work. And I think if anyone is considering, and I can see in the poll, there are plenty of people that are considering any kind of service transformation or investment or anything like that. And therefore, what the technology options might be, and other software is available, then any organisation, and particularly in a governance role like you all are, needs a really robust business case. And my experience of this is that it only gets tougher. These business cases only get tougher over time, and there's more rigor around what we need to do. So if we can help with that process in any way with this guide and with these discussions, but also inform ourselves as suppliers, then that's all positive. And then I think, ultimately, the whole point of this is the better the business case, in our experience, and I'm sure in yours, the better ultimately the programme of work that's delivered. So that's good. And I think if there can be collaboration at this stage, even better, between your suppliers and yourselves. So we just see that as a really, really positive thing to support. However, enough from me. Let's get on to the main discussion. And I'd like to hand you over to Rick, who is our independent regulatory consultant here today, who's going to lead this for us. Rick's a senior regulatory affairs, public policy and strategy leader. He's been doing it for donkey's years. I hope you don't mind me saying, Rick, and is really, really experienced in this area, and has worked with many organisations. So over to you, Rick.
Thank you very much, Sue, and hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for making the time to come and watch this webinar with us. I really appreciate your time. As Sue mentioned, I have been working in government for about 10. I worked for government for about 10 years in the Department of Health in different areas like information governance, patient data, the National Programme for IT, and also for the Professional Standards Authority for Health and Social Care, so professional regulation. I then worked for an organization, a self-regulatory body for standards in financial services to improve conduct, behavior, competence, and culture. I also had experience in a RegTech technology firm. So I learned a lot about technology for regulators. So I bring the regulatory expertise and the technology understanding to the work that I've done with Objective. And I am delighted that Objective asked me to prepare this guide. And also thank you to the Institute of Regulation for hosting us today in this session. So the guide was led by conversations I had with practitioners in regulation. So I have 3 colleagues here in the panel, and I will introduce them shortly. I also talked to others about their experience in putting together a business case for buying technology in regulation. I found in my desktop research that there is plenty of guidance out there for how to draft an effective business case, but they're not focusing on regulation or regulators. So what we're trying to do is to bring those lens, the regulatory lens, the regulatory ecosystem, the regulatory pressures, challenges, opportunities, and translate that into a step-by-step guide that you can read from beginning to end if you wish, or you can dip into different chapters and then you can extract the guidance that you need for specific areas. We also have a helpful checklist, which I'll show you in a second. So the idea is that I will introduce you the guide, some of the key findings, and then we'll have a conversation with the panel and allow you to also ask us questions. So why a strong business case matter now? So the guide starts from a basic but very important point that technology is no longer a support function. It's not a function that is supporting. It's pretty much at the center as an enabler to what regulators are trying to do to become more effective, to become more efficient, to become more resilient in terms of cybersecurity, operational resilience, and all the risks that we are aware of. And also to provide better services for your stakeholders, for your registrants, for the entities that you regulate, for the entities and organizations you have to report data to. So there's a set of stakeholders that you need to work with, and of course, how technology can help you be more effective in doing that reporting. But approval of a business case is not automatic. As we know, it's becoming complex, and sometimes you need to bring a lot of evidence to show why you need a new system or why you need to improve your current system. And doing the research, one common pitfall is not understanding the issues you're trying to address. So what is the problem that you're trying to address, the regulatory problem? What are the consequences of inaction? So what happens if you don't do anything? So there is a quote here in this slide of one of our contributors. What happens if we don't do this, if we don't invest in technology? So a good, strong business case will demonstrate the consequences of maintaining the status quo. And it might be a perfect choice. So you may choose to do nothing. Is one of the options that we have in an options appraisal table in the guide. Do nothing is an option that you could consider. But what are the consequences of maintaining that, particularly in relation to risks and future risks? The guide is organizing, the anchor and the organizing framework of the guide is the 5 case model from the Treasury's guidance on putting business case together, linked to the government Green Book. And I appreciate not every regulator in the UK or other jurisdictions potentially here today with us is linked to government. So you don't need to follow a government framework. However, we felt that the 5 case model gives you a good discipline, a good starting point. So we use that as a frame, and then the conversations and the insights from the regulators determined what I prioritized and what we included in the guide. So as you know, different regulators have different statutory objectives or powers or rights, governance, funding models. So you need to take that into account, your approvals process, your procurement process, so that we acknowledge that in the guide, and we try to make it as usable as possible across the regulatory ecosystem. The first case is the strategic case. So why is change needed? So you need to be able to answer that question. Why change? The second one is the economic case. So why is this the right option? So when you consider all the options available, the alternative options, why the preferred options is the right one? Commercial case, can it be procured successfully? So have you done a market scan? Do you understand what are out there in terms of solutions that could be useful to you? The financial case, is it affordable? Do you have the money, the funding? Have you considered all relevant costs? The guide discussed that some costs are overlooked by some organizations. For example, the cost of change management, the cost of future upgrades and future enhancements. And the last case is the management case. Can it be delivered? So do you have the right structure, governance in place to deliver what you are proposing in your business case? And of course, proportion application. It needs to be proportional to the size of your organization, to the complexity of the system that you want to purchase or implement, and your funding models and where you sit, if you are an independent regulator or if you are linked to a government agency or body. So what did regulators say to us? There are 5 recurring themes across all the conversations that I had. And as I mentioned, the guide is practitioner-led. So the first one is start with the problem, not the technology solution. Sometimes what my colleagues told me is that we meet with some suppliers because we want to understand their products, we want to understand what the market can offer, for example, for a new case management system. And then we start with that. So we like a case management system and we go and we start with those features. Oh, I want those features for me because I think they will be good for me, before we really understand what we're trying to address. And there is a report from the National Audit Office that there is a link in the guide where it says that most technology projects in the public sector will fail, has failed, because the business problem was not considered properly. So the guide urges everyone thinking about business case to really consider the issue first. Second, invest time in research and preparation. So there is a quote from one of the practitioners I talked to: research, research, research. Talk to your peers, talk to other regulators. We provide a list of questions, of practical questions that you can ask your peers in the guide, so you can just lift that. For example, anything that you regretted that you could do differently, any costs that you didn't forecast. Are you happy with your current supplier? What were the risks that I should think about? User involvement. One thing that they said to me is that we tend to talk to users, staff, the staff team, for example, or some of the stakeholders that will be using the new system at the beginning. So the business case potentially stage where we talk to users to gather the requirements we need, and then we don't involve them anymore, or we involve them in the implementation phase, which might be a bit too late. So the guide talks about engagement with your users throughout the process: business case process, procurement, implementation, and post go live. The fourth theme was manage change. Do not underestimate that technology implementation is an organizational change program. So you need to make sure that you have allocated enough resources and funding for communications, for staff training, and for all the other aspects of change management that's important for you to succeed in this. And never lose sight of the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. So outcomes focus. So focusing relentless on the outcomes and not outputs. So instead of thinking about, I can do X number of applications in X number of time, which is important data for you to have in terms of quantifying benefits, try to also think about what will be the outcome. The outcome will be you'll be more effective, your stakeholders will be happier with your system, your staff team will be more productive. So technology is part of the solution, not the starting point. That's the quote from one of our practitioners. So thinking about the whole program from beginning to end. So now I would like to ask you a question that I introduce the key findings of the guide. What is the biggest challenge your organization faces when developing business case for technology? And I believe my colleagues will launch the poll on your screen. I'll give you about 20 seconds to answer, please. So the first option is establishing the case for change, appraising different options, the procurement process, estimating full life cycle costs and long-term affordability, assessing risks, quantifying benefits, not sure, or other. Please include in the free text. Robin, please let me know how we're doing. Or Chelsea.
You should be able to see the results in the chat as well, Rick.
Okay. Do you want to say the results, please, so I don't come out of the screen? Please share with us.
I'll do it, Rick.
Yeah.
So yeah, the highest number is quantifying the benefits. That's 28% of people. And then next, establishing the first one, establishing the case for change, which is 17%. But it's quite a spread actually across. There's a vote for all of them, although there's a couple of not sures.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Sue. Appreciate that. So I just have 2 more slides to go before we have a conversation with the panel. This is a summary of the lessons that you will find in the guide, chapter 8. So building on those recurring themes, we put together one single table where you can print that page and put on your desk, and that could be a good reminder for you on when you are preparing your business case. So the first one about understanding the problem and starting with the issues instead of the technology. One of the common pitfalls is selecting a specific solution before and not understanding the root causes of what you're trying to do. And everything that you are proposing is not clearly understood. So make sure you understand everything first in the business case. Invest time in research. That's a better practice. And the problem definition, shaping your requirements instead of rushing to a solution. One of the practitioners said, take a break. So make sure that you take a break after you collect your requirements, understood what the issues are, take a break, take a space from it, and then come back to it so you have like a different perspective. Make sure that you have strong governance and accountability. So programs that succeed, they have sponsors who are engaged, you have an effective steering group, you have regular challenge and oversight in place from the beginning of putting the business case together all the way to delivery. So engaging your users so you create co-ownership, so they feel part of the decision-making process and they feel that they are consulted or involved continuously, from problem definition all the way to go live. Treat data as an organizational issue, not a technical one. So sometimes the requirements do not cover data, and data is only thought about at the end. So as an afterthought. Don't do that. Think about the data before, the cleansing that you need. Think about what the ownership of data is, where data sits. Do you need historical data to be moved to the new system? So asking those questions in the business case stage. Consider redesigning your processes as part of the business case. So one of the common pitfalls that practitioners told me is that existing and inefficient processes are replicated exactly in the new system. And that will add cost, will add complexity, you add issues with future maintenance and potentially higher customization. So mapping and challenging your current processes is a better practice. So asking yourself, are they still fit for purpose before I automate them? Define and measure your benefits as part of your business case development. So benefits that are not well defined is a common pitfall. And also, after implementation, some organizations tend to stop thinking about benefits realization. So continue that process even after go live. Set yourself with clear benefits indicators and quantitative data and qualitative data to demonstrate them. Plan the change management as carefully as you plan your implementation. Don't think about change as technology as just a technical delivery. Think about technology implementation as a change management delivery. And build for tomorrow's requirements, not just today's. So think about the future. Is your system scalable? Is it flexible enough? Is it interoperable? So thinking about future costs of upgrades and enhancements. And finally, we have in the guide a checklist by each of the 5 cases that I discussed. Here you have an example of the economic case, some of the questions that you can ask. And we believe that if you ask those questions, you will likely have a business case ready to go, basically. And the warning signs is a good table for you to go back against and think and assess your own business case before you submit it for approval. So, for example, are the benefits vague or aspirational when you read your business case? Is the preferred solution assessed before others and alternatives as well? So can you measure your benefits? So this is a quick overview of the guide. As Sue mentioned, the guide is going to be available after this session, so you'll be able to download it. I hope you do. I would love to hear your feedback when you download it. Please let us know what you think, if it is useful, if not, and what can be improved. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our panel. So I have here with me Richard Cartland, the Interim Executive Director of Transformation and Technology Services at the Nursing Midwifery Council. So Richard joined NMC in April 25 as Program Director for Fitness Practice Improvement Program, and since January he is in his current role. He has spent his career leading complex operations and managing programs across technology and media sectors, including Virgin Media, BT, and the BBC. Nick Jones is the Chief Executive and Registrar of the General Chiropractic Council, the statutory UK regulator for chiropractic profession. Nick has an extensive background in system healthcare regulation, including previous senior leadership as a director at the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority. He is committed to upholding high standards of professional practice and public protection, and the GCC was also a founding member of the Institute of Regulation, where Nick is the current chair of Chief Executives of Regulatory Bodies. Patrick Rickles is Head of Digital Innovation at the North Sea Transition Authority. Patrick is Head of Digital Innovation at the Authority, and he leads initiatives in digital capability, AI adoption, innovation, and business transformation. Patrick has a PhD in Geographic Information Science from the UCL and has published widely about organizational transformation. He's also the Deputy Head of Digital Strategy and EDI for the Government Geographic Profession and Director of the Association for Geographic Information. He was named as Computing IT Leaders 100 list. So this is my incredible panel, and I'm so grateful to all of them for being here. I will start with some questions, and this is going to be a conversation, so please put your questions in the chat as well. So Nick, if I can start with you, as we discussed, understanding the problem and the issues that new systems are trying to address is important, is one of the key messages in the guide. In your view and from your perspective, what should organizations do before going to market or engaging with suppliers?
Thanks, Rick, and good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all, and well done for giving up your lunch hour in the pursuit of fantastic business cases. I suppose I'd start off by saying I'm certainly not an expert. I've been involved in a few IT programs throughout my career, some more successful than others. I often use a bon mot in my team, which is if you ask the head of IT to give you the solution to a particular knotty problem, the answer is always yes. What they don't tell you is it'll cost you £10 million and take 10 years. So this is not probably a technology issue as far as I'm concerned, and all I can offer really is some perspectives from the scars on my back from having entered into a few programs. Last night I went to see a property that my son is thinking of buying, and it's definitely a fixer-upper. It reminded me of the first property and indeed the second property that I bought, which were both fixer-uppers. And looking around the first one, walking into the dining room, my thoughts turned to the fantastic shade of Farrow and Ball matte emulsion that would transform that room probably in a matter of weeks. When I looked around the dining room in the second fixer-upper that we bought, the colour on the wall was the furthest thing from my mind. And if you think of the colour on the wall as being your shiny new IT product, then what you've got to do in order to get to that point, which actually the painting of the emulsion on the wall probably takes about 3 hours at the end of 6, 9, 12 months of hard graft, stripping back the walls, taking off the architrave, undoing the door, lifting up the carpets. I won't go on and extend that analogy, but I think the point I'm trying to make there is how important it is to do all your preparation before thinking about your shiny new product. Even before you've even imagined the color of the paint, even before you've done that, I think it's so important to get ahead and really do understand the current process and pain points. That's what you think you're going to try and fix, but if you've not really understood what your processes are, then it's going to take much longer. Take the opportunity of reimagining how you might do things in the future, without thinking about technology or the glint of an eye of a supplier. Think about, are there ways in which, and inevitably there will be, if we are going to automate this process, what process do we want to automate? Do we do the tried and tested, or do we imagine at this point, very early on, how things could be? I suppose there's a third point, which is that staff and your people, and that, let's face it, that's where all of our issues are in our organizations. They don't start with technology, they start with people. And if you start on the basis that our people are potential barriers to change, then I think we're in trouble. Your people are your friends in this endeavor. They're the people who understand processes. The reason why they do things perhaps in a slightly clumsy or time-intensive way is not their fault. It's because things have accreted over the years. People have come and gone. Processes have changed. So I used to dread the word backfilling because it conjured up so many problems and so many challenges, but backfilling is probably your friend on this. Who are your stars in this? Who really understand the business and can really translate what you currently do to what you do in the future? And then I think there's something about building in challenge before you specify, building in challenge before you get to procurement. We've recently adopted a new case management system. We're pretty pleased actually with how it's gone. We contract with a firm called Fortesium, who have done a pretty good job, and we've been lucky with them, because what we ended up doing was, soon after implementation, we realized that our processes weren't great. Not implementation, preparation. So the work that was being put into place before you went live, as it were. Is that implementation? I don't know. But they were very generous in terms of changing quite a lot of the ways in which we originally specified our product. So that's the kind of wisdom I can offer on that front, Rick.
Thank you, Nick. That's excellent. Excellent analogy as well. So Patrick, if I can come to you about testing the value before you invest. So many regulators are under pressure to adopt new tools, new technologies. There's a lot of conversation about AI and so on, but resources remain limited. What questions should regulators ask before they decide whether a proposed business case for technology is genuinely worth pursuing?
Cool. Yeah, no, thank you, Rick, for an excellent question. And thanks everybody for having me today as well. I think one of the first things that we need to start off with is truly understanding the use case for what we're trying to implement. You know, I approve or reject business cases for implementation of technology within the organization. And the first thing I'm going to be looking at is, for this project, for this thing that you're suggesting, how does this align with our business values? How does this align with our mission and our strategy for what we're trying to achieve? If I can have a clear line from how the project actually addresses those things that we've made our commitments to do, I'm going to be more inclined to say, let's go for it. Whereas in comparison, if it turns out to be, it doesn't line up with that, it's a vanity project, something along those lines, I can't see the business value that it's going to generate for us, I'm going to be less inclined to approve it. And so, you know, it's really making sure that you align your projects and the things that you're trying to do with generation of that business value. So that's one part of it. Another part of it is, okay, so you've got a business case. Is it well considered? You know, you've got an idea of what you're trying to achieve, but have you thought about licensing costs, training costs? You know, the ideas that we're going to move from this piece of technology to this open source or this free solution. Free isn't free, because we have to still evaluate it, package it, deploy it. We have to remove old pieces of software. We work with our IT suppliers to make sure that we can do all of that. We have to pay them for that service as well. Not to mention, if you're moving people from one piece of technology to a different piece of technology, you have to train them up on that. That training comes at a cost too. And so all of these things need to be taken into consideration when we're actually looking into something. Now, you could find a quote unquote cheap piece of technology. If it's not properly supported, if it's not considered safe or secure, we're also not going to implement it. We want to make sure that we're implementing something that has some sort of support package associated with it, that it's coming from a reputable supplier like Microsoft or Oracle or anybody else really in that sense. And so we want to make sure that when people are doing those business cases for technology, all of these things are considered and they've done their homework, so to speak, too. Like, you know, the technology that a team might be looking to implement, I'm not necessarily going to be the expert on. Our legal team was looking into implementation of a case management solution, which not my area of expertise, but something that I can look into with those general questions. But I'm going to expect them to have done the background work on, you know, GDPR issues, data protection as we're loading data into those systems. Is this something that's going to be on premises so that way we control the data? Or is this going to be on a remote server so it's a software as a service solution? And so that being the case, have they looked into how the data is going to be transmitted? If there are any further things that need to be done to make sure that the data is safe and secure? You know, ultimately, we want to make sure that they're going to be answering those questions for us, providing us the information in IT and digital without us having to ask those questions. And fundamentally, that gets to the point really where we want to see that our partners in the organization, legal, disputes and sanctions, regulations, all of our different directorates, that they themselves are intelligent customers of the solution that they're looking to implement. It shouldn't all just fall back onto IT to be the tech people who are supposed to know everything. You need to know it too, because it's your software that you're going to be using. And really, you know, I'm not expecting them to know everything either. And I think one of the biggest pitfalls we end up in is that teams that aren't necessarily super duper tech savvy, but need this technical solution, don't know how to articulate the needs that they might have. And so what I would look to for suppliers while we're looking to see if this is something that we want to invest in when we start to engage with them is help us help ourselves. You know, help us ask the right questions, help us articulate those needs better. So that way it's not just, oh yeah, sure, we can do that. Yeah, that's not a problem. And then once we go into development, oh, well, that's not what you asked for. No, but this is what I wanted, but you didn't say that. But I didn't know how to say that to begin with. So fundamentally, we look at working with our suppliers as collaborators and partners, and we want to encourage that relationship more with the people that we work with going forward.
That's great. Thanks, Patrick. Collaboration and multidisciplinary teams coming together to learn from each other as well. So important. Richard, coming to you and thinking about business case discipline and governance. The guide, as we discussed, covers the 5Ks model as a framework, but recognize that regulators have different statutory, funding, and governance arrangements. What does a strong internal business case process look like for a regulator, in your view?
Thank you, Rick, and good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I think we all come from organisations of different shapes and sizes, but I think we need appropriate levels of governance. I think for a business case process, you know, whether you're in a small, medium or large organisation, a gated process, I think a fixed format for putting business cases together, help for the people who are putting the cases together. I mean, the first step is I always look for is somebody in the business who really wants this, who can articulate the problem that it's going to solve and has a vision of what it's going to look like, because they're more likely to be by your side as you go through each step and inevitably come up against hurdles along the way. But I think in an organization there will be business cases at different stages, so I think you need a good business case format. You need a gated process with governance between the steps in that process. So you start off with an idea, you get the okay to do some discovery that looks at what could be available, it looks at high level costs, that gives you go back to your governance to get approvals to go to the next stage, and then ultimately you end up you clearly want to be able to articulate the benefits. I think where most organizations struggle is they struggle a bit writing the benefits down, but they really struggle to deliver the benefits. So I think the gated process needs to go from concept right through to the realization of those benefits, because I think new technology, new systems have to be delivered, but they have to be embedded, and they have to endure. The benefits have to endure. So in 18 months' time, those benefits will still be there being realized. So I think those are the main components of the governance around it.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, the realization of benefits so important, isn't it? So people don't stop using the system and create different workarounds. Absolutely. Nick, that's a good segue to thinking about adoption of the new system. So the guide emphasized that implementation is not the same as adoption. What should regulators build into their business case to increase the likelihood of a new system being used effectively and delivering the intended benefit?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. I'm reminded of in one particular reasonably small system that we implemented a few years ago, that the sort of look of horror on colleagues' faces when we discovered that some of the tried and tested spreadsheets which had proliferated and which the software was seeking to replace were still in use, because there'd been some resistance internally, and that's kind of a nightmare scenario, isn't it? And whilst it was small in our case, I imagine that does happen up and down different programs. As Richard said, the importance of having a champion and someone who really gets it and has the vision for the system is terribly important. Equally, if that champion doesn't bring the team along with them, then there are problems afoot. And I think there is a slight tendency, maybe it's me because I'm a misery guts, but there's a slight tendency to view kind of incumbent teams as being barriers. And like I said last time, they're probably not. They're not dinosaurs. They don't invent these spreadsheets because they like to. It's because it's necessary in terms of their process. So that I think the more you have brought the users along at that early stage and they get it, they understand the benefits, they understand the business case, they understand the technology, and they can stand up and promote the benefits at the end of the day, rather than it being a technical exercise of look how many hours this has delivered us, how much savings it's delivered us. For someone to stand up and be surveyed, perhaps stand up in a staff meeting and say, look, this has transformed our life, this has made our customer experience so much better, we feel as though we can deliver our public protection duties so much more effectively as a consequence of these changes. That, I think, speaks a thousand words. So what does that mean? User engagement throughout the process. People have talked about super users and champions. I think that really is effective. If there's someone in the team who others can go to say, look, I don't know how this works, or how do we get this enhancement into the next release, then again, that might be a way of really embedding the system into people's working lives. I mentioned the measuring the benefits after the process. The evaluation can be human, and it can talk to what people how people are inspired. And then don't forget that, you know, I've mentioned the word release. There are lots of releases, aren't there, afterwards? And how do you keep engaged in that release program? How can you be, if the supplier's got lots of customers, how can you be ahead of the game? How you can contribute to that? Because I think suppliers like engaged clients. So how can you promote yourself as part of that to encourage the supplier to continue to make great improvements going forward?
Thanks, Nick. I remember we talked about continuous improvement, and you said that version 1 is just the start.
I think so.
Yeah, that's great reminder. Richard, if I can come to you to talk about data requirements, as the NMC is the largest professional regulator in the UK and Europe, data migration, data requirements probably is a huge challenge. So what do you think regulators should think about when building data migration, data quality, and reporting into the business case?
Yeah, I think data is kind of underestimated by a lot of organizations, but for a regulator, it's a core organizational asset. And I think, you know, we talked there, Nick, about Excel. You know, if I could put Excel back in the finance department, then I really would do, because I think we have to sort of get this concept of the core data that's on our core systems, and everybody has an obligation to look after that data and maintain it. Yes, you know, you can have your trackers and things, but they should feed off the core data, not replace it. And I think, you know, we've got a couple of areas where you know, we're having to kind of mop up some of the data that sits in spreadsheets in order to do a migration. So I think, you know, not only when you're going from one system to the other, do you really have to cost up what is the migration from the table structure of that first system to the table structure of the new system, and how are we going to get one to the other? You know, how are we going to cleanse that data? And a lot of the time, the only people who can cleanse that data are operational people who you know, can make decisions on it. But we've also got to look at, why are people using those spreadsheets, and why are people using those trackers? And when we bring the new system in, how much of that will be dealt with by the new system, and how much of it is value add? But I think, for me, trackers need to feed off the core data in the system. So things like Power BI is great at taking data and manipulating it and giving people in the organization great views on it, and that's fine, but it should never replace the core data, which is an institutional asset for a regulator.
Thank you. That's great advice there, from someone who is sitting in a very complex regulator in terms of data. Patrick, everyone is talking about AI and innovation. How do you balance innovation with control, cybersecurity? So how can regulators, in your view, encourage innovation and maintain the proper controls over data, cybersecurity, accountability, and quality of outputs?
Yeah, a really good question. I think there's a balance. So we want to make sure that we're putting, you know, necessary security control, governance in place, while at the same token not stifling innovation. I think one of the core things, getting back to what you were just saying, Richard, data's got to be good quality. It's got to be trusted. It's got to be it's got to be what we know is correct in the organization. We can't have people going off and using random data sources for the things that they might want to do. So when people are creating AI agents and they're using retrieval augmented generation, feeding the data in that the agent would use, it's got to be good data. Otherwise, it's garbage in, garbage out, as usual. It doesn't matter how nice that agent is. If the information it gives back is wrong, then there you go. So yeah, we need to make sure that agents are using good quality data, and what's coming out from the agents or just from Gen AI that you might be using for your day-to-day work, that you're checking what's coming out. Don't just copy and paste it. The little joke that I like to say is it's Copilot, not autopilot, because we advise people to make sure that they use Copilot. Don't use other AI AI agent or other AI interfaces, just mainly because we don't have the same level of controls because of our licensing with Microsoft that we have in place. But yeah, it's that messaging. It's a lot of the messaging of, like, awareness. We do awareness sessions, we do training, we engage with people locally within the organization. Anytime anybody wants to do an AI project that's coming through my team, we'll have a chat with them about it. And they might say certain things that might have me a little bit worried, but I'd rather have them talking with me, and then maybe I can dissuade them from certain things that they shouldn't be doing, rather than leaving them to just go off and get on with it because they don't want to talk to me because they're scared, and then they really start doing some things that I don't want them to do. So it's a matter of knowing what you're trying to do. Again, making sure that what you are doing, you're not just creating an agent for the sake of creating an agent. You're doing it because it's going to deliver against a business need, and you're using the right data for it. Once you're doing something like that, you'll have support from across the organization to do the thing that you're looking to do. And within my organization, we have our live production environment. We also have our sandbox environment. So if somebody wants to work on something a little bit more volatile, maybe they're doing some, maybe they're looking to spin up some sort of AI output that is, doing custom programming with Python in large language models. We're going to suggest that people do that over in the sandbox environment first before they try it in production. Whereas in comparison, if they're looking to create a these days, chatbot and AI agent to answer internal questions associated with, how do I claim my expenses? What if this business case is over a certain amount? Like, what's the right protocol to file this thing? Those sorts of use cases, we're perfectly fine for them to be tested in our production environment, again, with the right controls over it. So we want to make sure that you're involving humans across the whole process. So if you're looking to do something, you're looking to use data, check with the data owner, make sure that you're using the right data for that. Check with cybersecurity to make sure that you're developing things in a safe and secure way. And then once you have an output and you have an agent that people are using it, monitor it, who's using it, how they're using it, what outputs they're producing from it. What are we doing with those outputs? How are we attributing those outputs to make sure that we're saying to people, this output was created by AI and checked by this person on this date from our organization. So we're being transparent and honest for when we're using AI to do the things that we want to do. And then it also comes back to training. So again, those awareness sessions, making sure that people feel comfortable and confident with using AI. I tend to see two things happening. Either people are so excited to use it, they then use it to produce things that they probably shouldn't and do things that they shouldn't. So I've got to rein them back in a little bit. And then I have other people who are scared to use AI because they think that if they use it, they're going to blow up the internet. And it's just like, no, you can use it. It's fine. We're not going to cut your head off if you do something slightly wrong. We can work with it. That's how we learn. But coming back to, I guess, what people might be interested in here, we have some pilot projects that we're doing internally, but also other ones that we've contracted people in externally to help us explore. So we've gone through the supplier process, business case, found people to partner with, and we've got some of those small projects going on right now. And I'd say for that, for those suppliers that are out there that might want to do business with us, again, it comes back to making sure that there is a true business need for what we're trying to do. Don't just jump to like, oh yeah, we could do that for you. That's amazing. It'll sound wonderful. It'll solve all of your problems. Like, no snake oil salespeople, please. Thank you. Make sure that what you are suggesting to us with AI is going to address the business need. And in the meantime, what I'm trying to focus on is build capability in the organization so that way we are, again, intelligent customers of the things that we may create with AI internally or externally.
Excellent. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you very much to Nick, Patrick, and Richard. Any questions from the audience? I can't see any in the chat, but anyone wants to come on and ask a question?
While we're waiting, Rick, I was just going to ask one. And I'm aware the answer may be, well, how long is a piece of string? But in terms of expectation of timing, how long do you think is an appropriate amount of time to be doing this process? And is there such a thing as spending too long on it?
Thank you, Sue. Who wants to pick that up? Richard,
I don't think there is a, it's a great question. I don't think there, you've got to do, you've got to do it well. You've got to get to the root of why do you want to do something? What are the benefits of it? And that takes as, you've got to engage widely, and that takes as long as it takes, I think, for me.
Richard, I'd agree with you. It's better to take your time evaluating something than start something too quickly, and you just end up wasting money.
Yeah, agree. I do a ton of work before you even think about the word business case.
Thank you, Nick. Any other questions from the audience? No, thank you so much, everyone. We are coming to the end of this session. Thank you again, Nick, Patrick, and Richard. Super grateful for your contribution. We'll hand over to Sue to just give you a quick introduction of where you can download the guide, and then we conclude. Sue, over to you.
Thank you. And yeah, thanks to everyone. I think we're pretty much going to come in on time, which is magnificent. So yes, we have the guide. There's the QR code there. You can download from there, and I think Sinead's already shared it in the chat, so you can do that. And also for belt and braces, it will be sent to everybody as well if you've left us your email address. So plenty of ways to get it. My email address is there as well. If you have any issues, please feel free to also reach out to me or the IoR. I will say trophy of the day is awarded to Nick for the best analogy I think I've heard. And in all seriousness, it does, as a supplier, being perfectly serious, it does make you think about, there is a right time for us to be engaged and to understand how you're thinking as well. Yes, the Farron bull paint, perfect. I'm taking that one away. So yes, just to thank everybody for their time. Great discussion. Any problems, just let us know with downloading anything. And yes, feedback is king. So we would love to hear it. Thank you very much indeed. Have a good rest of day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.